with a huge sacrifice.
Ka hua mai te kāwanatanga Pākehā I konei, ka tipu mai I reira te tahi hiehia kia mate te tangata e kia nei he Māori.
They're determined to fight, and we must treat them as a species of savage beasts, which must be exterminated to render the colonisation of New Zealand possible.
And that comes with all the other things, you know, the diseases and language shift, culture shift, resource challenges, and ultimately some fighting. All of that just culminated in one really toxic kind of mess, you know.
Pākehā society starts to purport and present Māori as being lesser than, and having that kind of portrayal around the savage, around the Neolithic culture, around, you know, living in the mud hut, starts to emerge as a power play that starts to render not only the people but their language as also being inferior.
We were taught that everything we were doing was bad and everything they were doing was good, that white was right. I'm just going to be frank. This is not a racist talk, this is just what it is. It's just the reality. This is just reality. This is what our people have faced.
I reira mutu ai te tahuri te Pākehā ki te ako I te reo Māori ki anoho ko te reo Pākehā anake tō rātou reo.
I tērā wā, ko te nuinga o ngā Māori e noho ki tua whenua, e noho ana ki ngā papakainga, ki ngā marae, ka noho tonu ko te reo Māori ki o rātou kāinga. Ka mōhio tonu te Māori, me mea pirangi ana kia mahi Pākehī, ka tere ki te atu me ako te reo Pākehā.
I ki te rātou I whakatairanga ake te hapori Pākehā I tō te Māori. Nō reira I tere tahuri ki te reo Pākehā kia kimi oranga mo te reanga ka whai ake I muri iho.
Ko tō rātou wawata nui nei kia mau ngā tikanga, kia mau tō rātou mana whakahaere, kia mau te rangatiratanga, koera te take I uru ki roto I ngā mahi Pākehī, I uru ki te kāwanatanga, kia mau tonu te rangatiratanga. Kāore o tātou tupuna I whakaaro ka ngaro te reo Māori.
I don't think anybody truly could have foreseen what was going to happen up until we had Pākehā politicians who were really individually keen on killing the language.
Yes, well, as I said before, I think it's not a new conversation among Māori, and what was rewarding for us really on the working group was that we were worried that if we asked our people to talk about a constitution that wouldn't rank in their top 10 priorities, but in fact it actually did. They may not, like the kuia, have used the word constitution, but they understood about power and powerlessness. They certainly understand the treaty, and that history really is what I think underpinned all of the discussions which we had.
And one of the starting points of the report is that Māori never ceded sovereignty, something the Waitangi Tribunal has also recently concluded. So what does that mean for the legitimacy of the current unwritten constitution?
Well, what the Waitangi Tribunal in its recent report on the claim in the North said was that, as Māori had always said, iwi did not cede sovereignty, but what the treaty did envisage was a constitutional relationship involving what the tribunal again called two different spheres of influence, a crown sphere, if you like, and a rangatiratanga sphere. And the challenge which the country has not met at all well since 1840 was how those two spheres of influence could operate both independently and interdependently. So it's not a question of the treaty saying that one sphere is illegitimate and the other's legitimate, which of course is what the Crown has been saying, that any Māori claims to authority are illegitimate, but rather recognising that in the treaty relationship the parties have a right to make decisions and they have an obligation to come together and work on matters of common interest.
So you say that you believe that prior to colonisation there was a constitutional framework in place?
Well, every society works out for itself fairly quickly in its history that a harmonious community cannot exist in a power vacuum. It cannot exist in a lawless state. And so all communities develop systems of law and they develop systems of constitutionalism, which are really just the ways in which people make decisions and determine their own destiny. So iwi and hapu were polities, were constitutionally constructed and mandated political decision-making bodies, just as those in Britain and France and so on develop their own constitutional systems out of their culture and their history. The idea of a constitution is not unique to Western Europe.
Did it differ from iwi to iwi?
There were some common threads, of course, the importance of the land, the importance of relationships and a notion of interdependence.
Yeah. Very few of them can speak the Maori language.
They can understand it, but most can't speak it.
We do get to a point in the 60s where grandparents to their kids and their grandchildren, they're speaking English, and that's like the red flag.
The disempowerment of the language, that is the beginning of the disempowerment of a generation of a people.
Often, Maoris who've been brought up in town have lost their sense of identity, of where they're from and what tribe they're from.
By the time we get to the 1970s, we have a generation of Māori who are largely not speakers of Te Reo Māori, moving into universities, being conscientised around political theory. They're annoyed. They're annoyed at what has happened generations beforehand to eliminate them as people.
The 1970s was really a time of challenging authorities for us as young Māori, because we could see what was happening. It was very obvious that our language was in distress.
And so Ngā Tamatoa at Auckland University and Te Reo Māori Society at Victoria University, you start to see them taking a stand on reclaiming Te Reo Māori.
As a youngster, Māori wasn't spoken in our home. English was my language. So when I went to university in 1969, met a whole lot of other Māori language students, and we became the activists that became Te Reo Māori Society.
Good morning, Mrs. Dash.
My involvement was with Ngā Tamatoa in Wellington.
We were all bright and we were astute politically. Oh, yes.
The thing was, our parents' generation were, they used the conservative methods of protest. They were very polite.
It is high time civilised multicultural attitudes took over from the ignorance born of white racism.
And we got to the point where, no more politeness. We just need to, shove it in their faces and let them know that we're not happy with the way in which they treat us.
The facts are clear. Māoris are not succeeding in the Pākehā world.
I like to think about the petition as being a partnership between Ngā Tamatoa and Te Reo Māori society.
I don't recall what year it was, whether it was 1970 or perhaps early 1971. Hana Te Hemara came to our home and requested help from my dad for her Ngā Tamatoa petition. Dad put it to us as to whether or not we were willing to support the petition, and yeah, we just loved the idea. Once she had us on board, we were there, totally, 100%.
My sister Kathy was the one who said, well, kia whai mana te kōrero, we'll need some signatures. Technically speaking, of course, the lawyers and law students in the group told her the fact that we had a petition was technically sufficient, and that she didn't accept that, so basically, so we couldn't. So there's no doubt in my mind, and my memories are very clear on this, that the drive came from women in our group. Basically, they had the final say, I suppose.
So I was the controller. You know, I had to be the cool, calm Lieutenant General, you know, holding the fort. I had determined who would go down what street and, you know, how many houses they had to cover.
My role and what I did was in collecting signatures. It was one of those situations of putting yourself out there, being aware that you could possibly be abused or attacked, but taking the stance that this was a necessary thing to do.
We are the so-called non-achievers in our society. We fill the prisons, we're on the dole and all that kind of stuff, education requirements. And I attribute a lot of this to the erosion of our culture and having to do it a way that's not user-friendly to our way of life. Now, by creating success in our own initiatives, then we are going to lift ourselves up, and soon we will be able to look eyeball to eyeball with the mainstream system, if you like.
To achieve
what we're actually doing was validating Māori knowledge, and that Māori knowledge needs to be validated because we've never given it up, but it has no status in New Zealand. The Taiaha, or the Māori Long Club, to me is the ideal symbol of where we're at today and what is required. That it stands for discipline and hard work, that it encompasses our deepest customs, that it is our identity. It's the glamour weapon, if you like, of Māori weapons. What is important is that the customs associated with the weapon, which were the way of life of my people, are preserved and available to empower New Zealanders. Māori knowledge, which was suppressed in colonisation, and this is something people hate talking about. You know, it's like they own it. They own the guilt. God damn it, people today didn't pass those laws, and they wouldn't pass them if the opportunity came up today. But somebody passed a law which said, it's called the Tohunga Suppression Act, that Māori culture is outside the law. If you say culture and things are wishy-washy and not important, then you lose a whole dimension of your life. You actually lose your spirituality. What disappoints me most is that the damage that has been done to our tenacity, and it's like the dole. If you keep paying out the dole, then after a while people will accept that as a norm. And I think that our people have been at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder too long and have a general acceptance of this, that white is right, that Pākehā have brought this great culture to New Zealand and ours is secondary. They've seen that they're at the bottom of the educational ladder or the economic ladder and they have a poor house or something. They've accepted that role. We have been made to feel that we are hopeless. And as a result of that, many of our people don't know how to rise above that.